Hi everyone. Thanks for coming to September safety meeting. I want to start by saying thank you to all of you drivers and monitors and staff that are working so hard to safely transport our students to and from school. The first few weeks have been really difficult and you all have rose to the challenge. Keep up the good work and we will have a great year. This month, our safety meeting is going to discuss evacuation drills that will be coming up in October, child checks, and collisions. School bus evacuations. So it's that time of year. Those of you that have been around for a while are familiar with these. Those of you that have not been around for a while, this might be new to you. So we're going to talk about what they are, who they're for, where they are located, where we do them at, and the whys, the why we do them. So let's go ahead and get started with evacuations. So who's involved in evacuations? You, the bus driver, you, the school bus monitor, and your students. So the reason that we have these evacuations is so you all know how to react in the case of an emergency. And so that your students know how to react in the case of an emergency. For many students, this is not new. With the upper grades, you will have a majority of students that have been doing this since kindergarten. You will likely find that the drill process for high school students will run much smoother than the elementary, and that's okay, that's to be expected. So you might ask yourself, what does the process of a school bus evacuation drill look like? Some of you, like I said, this is not new. This is a review for you. But for those of you that have never done this before, I will have a suggested script for you to go off of. It's kind of helpful, even for those of you that have been doing this for years. Just go down the script and use it as a guide to make sure that you don't miss any of the topics that need to be covered. So it's important to explain the things to the students, verbalize them, address them all as a group, and let them know what we are doing and why. Let them know that in the case of an emergency, there might be times it will be safer to be off the bus than on the bus. So it's important that we be specific with our students without scaring them. So give examples like if the bus was going to get stuck on a railroad track, or if maybe there was a threat of a fire, we would want to get off the bus as quickly as possible. Don't say things like, we're all going to die if you don't get off the bus fast enough. Things like that could really scare them. We don't want to deal with that. So the discussion that you have with your students shouldn't be very long, only a few minutes. And remember that with the younger kids, their attention span is pretty short, so we need to kind of cater to that. Your students might have questions, but it's important that you remain in control of your bus. It's okay to answer questions, especially if they are pertaining to the topic at hand. Sometimes, though, younger children have a tendency to go way off topic when they're talking about when you're having a discussion. If you ask them, does anybody have any questions, you might get some really interesting questions that have nothing to do with the topic at hand. So we will discuss the reasons for the evacuations with the students. Then we're going to practice the process. For our purposes, we will only be doing a front door evacuation. But when you're having a discussion with your students, let them know that because we're doing a front door evacuation drill doesn't mean that we can't use the back door in case of a real emergency. So each bus should have a helper and a leader. Choose older students or more responsible students. You might have a third grader that's a lot more responsible than the fifth grader, and that's okay. So your student helper should stand outside the door to help the other students off the bus, and then your student leader will help guide the students at least 100 feet from the bus. So when you tell your students that they need to go at least 100 feet from the bus, help them out with that. Most people, students don't understand what 100 feet from the bus looks like. So when you pull into your school, you can do this today, you can do this anytime between now and when your evacuation drill is. Try to find a location in your loading zone that is 100 feet, just in point. Say, hey, you see that tree over there? That's where we're going to meet. And it can be anything. It can be a tree, it can be a post, it can be a flag pole, it could be a boulder, just something that will designate a spot that's recognizable to your students. So once you find your spot, the driver is going to dismiss the students one seat at a time, walking backwards down the aisle and instruct the students to follow the leader. So as you walk backwards, you're going to point to the seat and say, go ahead and go, and just go backwards. And that way you can look in the seat and make sure the students are leaving. And you can block the students from rushing the aisle that way as well, the students behind you. It kind of forces them to stay in their seat until you pass their seat. That allows for less chaos and more of a single file line, which is what we want. So on your way back up to the bus, once you get to the rear of the bus, you will check each seat for students while exiting, and then join your students in their location. So when are we doing this? The school bus evacuations will happen the first week of October. On your scheduled day, you will be given a script to follow and sign off stating that you completed it with your students. Each school that you go to, so if you do 3 tiers, elementary, middle, and high school, you will do one of those evacuations for each school. Now, remember that the high school and the middle schools are going to be a little bit faster just because the students are so used to it. They're not going to have the questions that the little ones do. But please try to follow the protocol at all of the grade levels. Find your helpers, ask them to stand at the door, and ask them to meet you at a specific location. Now, the older kids, especially in high school, they may take off. Hopefully they don't. Maybe during your talk with them before they get off the bus, just emphasize how important it is that you stay together as a group. If this was a real emergency, you would need to stay together as a group. So our dates are Monday, October 4th will be the elementary schools. Tuesday, October 5th will be the high schools, even routes. So if you're, I'm just pulling random numbers here because I don't know what schools you go to, but if you're, C38, you would be on October 5th for high school. If you're C39, you would be October 6th. And then the same with the middle schools, the 7th and the 8th, even in odd days. Where are we doing this? It's a good question. In your bus loading zones. When you pull into the loading zone and it's your day to do your evacuation, pull your bus as far forward as you can in your loading zone without hindering or blocking access so other buses can get around you. And then put your hazards on so the other buses will know that that's what you're doing and that you're going to be there for a while. If you are not doing an evacuation on a day, please have patience with your coworkers in the loading zones. I know it can be stressful. You just want to drop and get out of there. Some of you've got other routes to go on, but remember that your day will be the next day and having a little bit of patience and grace with each other is going to go a long ways. So just do the best that you can out there, and we'll get it done. So why do we do emergency evacuation drills? Safety, of course. It's really important that our students understand that that emergencies can happen. We want to make sure that they know that it's not likely that an emergency will happen to where they have to be evacuated. The statistics are quite low on actual bus evacuations. However, when it does occur, we need to be prepared. So the students need to know that they are safe with you, and if something were to happen, they can look to you for leadership. Also, it's the law. State mandates that each driver must have copies of evacuation forms on file for 3 years. Obviously, drivers that have not worked here for 3 years don't need to worry about that, but we do need to keep records of these in our files, so when we get audited, the state doesn't have any problem with your particular file, that it's in there and they see it and it's good to go. One thing that's important to remember is that the students do feel that they are secure with you. I had a driver not too long ago was in a rear end accident. It was not the driver's fault. The driver did everything right, but it was a little bit scary for the students. And when I got to the scene, the driver had done a great job in making sure the students knew that they were okay, nobody was injured, and that everything was going to be just fine. Now, after everybody was released, this driver told me that had the students not been on board, they would have had a lot more panic inside them, and that's understandable. This driver knew that they really needed to stay calm for the sake of the students, even though it was really difficult on them. And this is really important to bring up because in these times of stress and situations that could cause a lot of chaos and anxiety, you do need to be the leader for the students, and they're looking to you for that. So just remember that that's why one of the reasons we practice these things. Take it seriously, do it for real, and if it ever really has to happen, you'll be a little bit more prepared. So how do we do an evacuation on a special transportation bus? If you have students that are capable of evacuating with the help of a monitor or a willing teacher, and they would like to do an evacuation, by all means, go ahead and work on that with them. I had one special transportation group that was the 18 to 21 program one time, and I had no problem doing an evacuation drill with them. But most of the time, the special transportation kiddos are going to be really difficult to take through the process of a drill. So what we need to do is develop a plan for your route. All of the special transportation routes should develop a written evacuation plan for your students, identifying the unique needs in the plan. So if you have a student that's hearing impaired, that should be documented in the plan. If you have a student that uses a walker, those are the sorts of things that need to be just documented in your plan. Every staff person on your bus, so that's the monitors, the driver, and if you have any other attendants on your bus, they all need to know what their role is in case of an emergency, and should be able to verbally explain the plan in less than 1 minute. A copy of the written plan needs to be given to me, the safety manager, and another one should be kept on your bus for EMS to access if it's ever needed. So you should have where the students are sitting, what their special need is, if they have, a need that needs to be notified. You should also have knowledge of any hospital, fire station, or police station on your route. Just know where they are. Just consciously aware. If on your evacuation plan you want to write out where those are, that would be great knowledge for future use if it's ever needed. Now, I don't expect any of you to go and write an essay or develop some sort of Word document. We're working on having a form that hopefully will have the picture of a bus, a diagram, and it will be kind of a fill in the blank with the names and what the unique needs are, and then have maybe a short area to write out what your plan is. And that will be your sign off. Now, again, you will need one of these for each and every one of your schools. And that just needs to come to me. And that is how you develop a evacuation plan for your special transportation kiddos. Also, if you have any questions on how to go about doing that, please feel free to come and talk to me. I don't have any trouble sitting down and helping you with it. I think Barb is another one that would be a good resource. If you have any unique questions, just reach out and find the answers for that. So our next topic is child check and double check. I want to say that this location is phenomenal with their double checking and their child checking and their triple checking and sometimes quadruple checking. I know that I hear a lot of frustration from you guys, not all of you. A lot of you don't mind walking your bus multiple times. That's great. But I just want to say thank you for doing it. It seems redundant at times. It seems like we're asking you to do things because you're not trusted. That's not the case at all. We're doing it because we care about our students, we care about the community that we're in, and we take these precautions to prevent anything from happening. I can say that a few times just this year alone, we have had a missing child on the radio, and we find out that the bus is in the yard, and so somebody goes running out to the bus just to make sure that that child is not on the bus, and it's never happened. So it's a good feeling to know that we are doing everything we can to make sure that these children, if something is terrible is to happen, it's not going to happen because of negligence on our part. So let's talk a little bit about the dangers of an unattended passenger. We all know that school startups can be chaotic. Routing schedules are getting settled. Passenger rosters are being finalized. Drivers often have new students. Some of you have the same students that you've had for years and years, with maybe just a couple new ones every year. But a lot of our drivers are new, and so every single one of the students are new to them. You must familiarize yourself with the students while navigating the roads and heavily congested drop-off lanes. We have this all over our area. So if you, at the schools in the mornings and the afternoons, ask the students when they're getting on and off the bus, "Hi, what's your name? I'm just trying to learn people's names. What's your name? My name's Natalie. What's your name?" All of the elementary kids are going to give you their name. They want to be your friend at that age, so they are looking to not have disapproval from you. So they're gonna comply. And you ask your kids their names every single day. You're gonna learn them. I had one group one time where I just told them every day. I'd pull into the school in the morning and I'd say, okay, as you get off the bus, tell me what your name is. And after about a week, I knew probably 90% of the kids' names, and it was really helpful. Once you learn their names, you start to learn where their stops are. You recognize, okay, Natalie got off at this stop today, so when you pick her up in the morning, it's Natalie. So then you start greeting them by their name and you start seeing them. Then, after you've gone through that process of recognizing, you start to realize if Natalie didn't get off at her stop in the afternoon, you wonder where she is. And that's that familiarization that's so important with the unattended passenger problem that we have. So keep that in mind. One of the big problems with having a student left on the bus is just the warmth or the cold in our climate. Our weather really plays a role in just if the kids are okay. So this shows that in 2018 and 19, 53 children died of vehicular stroke each year. Now, this doesn't say that it's school buses or other vehicles. I'm going to assume that there's a whole plethora of vehicles recorded in this number. In 2020, during the COVID year, 25 children lost their lives in hot cars. So even though most people were staying home, it was still happening. So far in 2021, 17 children have died. So there's a link here if you want to look up how this information was retrieved. You can go ahead and type that in and Google away, and find out anything else that's interesting, let me know. So 100% of vehicular heat stroke deaths in children are preventable. That's obvious, right? We all should know that every single one of these heat stroke deaths are preventable. Here's some more numbers. 80% of heat rise occurs in the first 30 minutes. 135 degrees can be reached inside a sealed vehicle, and it's 30 degrees hotter in a vehicle interior can be versus outside temperature. So this just shows that the more a vehicle is sitting, the longer it's sitting, the more closed up it is, the hotter it gets. So if you have a child in your bus on a warm day, it can cause vehicular heat stroke. And I know that there's not one person watching this that would not be devastated by that happening. So what is our procedure? At the end of each run, walk through the bus, searching on and under the seats, and then you disarm the electronic child system. Now, I know that this is, with the way that we're doing our child checks this year, for some people, this has been an issue. I just want to reiterate how important it is that when our system here in Meridian is you pull into the yard, you get out of your seat, you secure your bus first, get out of your seat, and walk to the back of the bus. Don't shut your bus off because we don't have time for everybody to sit there and do that. So the person that's checking the bus will open the door. They need to be waiting for you to come to the back of the bus. I've been seeing a lot of people sitting in their seats, in the driver's seat, turning around to the back of them and giving a thumbs up to the person in the back of the bus. This is not the way we want to see it done. We really want to see you up, walking to the back of the bus. If you struggle with walking to the back of the bus, maybe we need to have a conversation about some other issues, but that should be a different conversation. If So there really should be no reason not to walk to the back of the bus. And if it's your fourth or fifth time that day walking to the back of the bus, great. You've searched that many more times. That means there's that many less chances that you're going to have a child on the bus. So after you've checked your bus, you return to the front of the bus, searching on and under the seats. And remember, when you see a backpack or a jacket, it might be a sign that a child is in a nearby seat. So keep an eye out, even harder for that when you find a lost item like that. So our policy is if a student is left unattended on one of our vehicles, the driver and the monitor, if present, will have their employment terminated immediately and may face criminal charges. I will tell you that this is a very, very, very unpleasant conversation for everybody to have, everybody involved. Please don't make Paul or me or Rebecca have this conversation with you. Just do it. Just get up. It's a commitment to your kids that you are going to do your child checks multiple times a day. One of the reasons that we do them multiple times is think back to before we started the double check program. How many times did you pull into the yard and you walked to the back of your bus, you pushed the button, you left the bus, and you could not honestly tell yourself 5 minutes later that you searched every single one of those seats? Because maybe your head was up, maybe you were distracted by what you were going to have for dinner, maybe you were distracted by where you need to go after work or what errand you're going to run on your midday, and your head was not where the seats are. You weren't doing a focus search with your head down, searching between the seats. I know for myself that has happened many, many, many times. So I myself have dedicated myself to doing a focused search each and every time I walk the aisle of the bus. And I'll walk the aisle, I'll offload, I'll pull over, I'll search it. I'll do that 3 times if I have 3 routes in an afternoon, and then when I get back, I come into the yard, I do another focus search with the child check looking under the seats, and then when I park the bus, I do it once more. And yes, it's redundant, I get it, but it's not hurting me at all to walk to the back of the bus multiple times. If anything, I'm getting my steps up on my Fitbit. So it really shouldn't be a problem. It's the same thing for the caravans or passenger vans. So you guys out there driving vans, don't think you're exempt from doing a child check. The way we do these is we open both side passenger doors and look under each seat, and we open the back hatch and look under each seat if it's visible. If not, we look in the hatch. If you have blankets in the hatch, pull them up. Make sure that there isn't some little one that's playing a game and hiding under a blanket. Just do a thorough search. The same policy is in place with the vans as in with buses. Please, van drivers, don't let us have this conversation with you. It's very uncomfortable, and it's a very sad conversation to have with an employee. So what do we do though when a child is found? I had a child 2 days ago that I found asleep. I had done a shuttle from Desert Sage to Pepper Ridge, and I pulled into Pepper Ridge, and before I loaded my home to school kids, I did my child search, and sure enough, I found a little sleeper on the bus. She's a little girl, exhausted from her day at school. So what do? I attempt to wake the child without touching them, speaking in a normal voice, and calling a child's name. Now, I didn't know the child's name. She was probably 6-ish, maybe 7. And so I sat in the seat next to hers or across the aisle from hers. And I said, "Hey, we're at your school. It's time to wake up." And she wasn't waking up. And so the next thing I did, it was very interesting. I put this PowerPoint together the day this happened, so the morning that this happened. So the next thing I did was I made every effort possible to wake the child verbally. Wasn't happening. So I needed to physically interact with the child. So how do you do that in a safe manner for both you and the child? Lightly tap the middle of their arm or shoe if the child is laying down, to avoid touching near the face, hands, or any other areas of the body. Now this little girl was laying with her head towards the window. Her head was propped up on her backpack and her little feet were up on the seats. Which is another reason to do a full child check, because had somebody been looking underneath the seats like we do in the back seats of the back of the bus, she would not have been seen. She was curled up on the seat. So I took her little shoe, because that was what was near the aisle, and I just kind of wiggled her shoe and I said, "Hey, we're here. It's time to get up." And sure enough, she woke up and she looked very shocked. She was very disoriented. You could see that she wasn't sure where she was. She didn't recognize me as her driver. She had a little bit of panic. So the student, or there was somebody from the school standing on the sidewalk, holding back the home to school kids while I was doing my search. And I went and got her and I said, "I've got a sleeping kiddo. I'm not sure if she belongs here or if she's going on the bus route. Can you help me out?" And the helper got on the bus and was trying to speak to the student. Finally, the helper said, "Do you speak English?" And the little girl said, "No." And so fortunately, I know enough Spanish that I was able to hop in, and I asked the girl her name, and I asked her if she knew what bus she rode. And as soon as I started speaking her language, which is funny because I'm terrible at Spanish. It's very broken. My accent is terrible. Anybody that heard me that was an adult would probably laugh at me. But this little girl was appreciative that I at least knew how to ask her name. And so I was able to find out that she did belong on that bus, and she pointed to 2 other boys on the bus that got off at her same bus stop. And so they confirmed, yes, she does get off at their bus stop. So it turned out well, because I had taken the time and the effort to care about this child and to find her and make sure that she was going where she was going to be. So if this had been after the route for the day and I had walked my bus after my last bus stop and I had found her, I would have immediately dispatched in, and then dispatch would have notified the school, and we would have gotten the child home safely. So when you find a child is sleeping, find out where they go, make sure that you radio it in. If you don't communicate with dispatch that you have a sleeping child, then we've got some problems. So that's very important that you radio it in and you contact dispatch and let them know. That way, if they have a parent on the phone saying, "My child didn't get off the bus," they have an answer. So our double check is a policy. It's an STA policy. It's not a Paul Gomez policy. It's not a Rebecca Linac policy or a Natalie Ellis policy. This is from the company. For those of you that don't know, I know a lot of you know all of this. This is just a recap. So thanks for hanging in there with me. So they have instituted a mandatory double check policy, which must be completed in all locations. So our policy, or our company here, our location is not alone. Every single STA across the nation is doing the same thing. So the double check does not replace the need for the driver to perform their child check. It's an added precaution to help ensure that no child is left unattended on a school vehicle. Again, that's our commitment. That's our commitment to our students. That's a commitment to our community to make sure that we don't have unattended children on the bus. So it is critical that a thorough child check and double check are performed at the end of every route every single time. That's why we have you pull in, you walk the bus, somebody checks underneath the seats. That's our double check. You're doing the child check. The person behind the bus is doing the double check. We do this each and every time, and there can be no exceptions. So next up, we're going to talk about what to do in the case of a collision. Terry Woods has put together a really good presentation on what to do if you have an incident or accident while in your bus. So I'm going to move you over to her presentation and I'll see you afterwards.
Let's talk about accidents and collisions. In your classroom training, we've learned that an accident is an unplanned event, it disrupts activity, it involves and affects people, and is caused. But now we're going to start calling them collisions. When I say the word school bus accident or collision, these are probably the pictures that pop into your mind. Horrible pictures, ones that feel like a gut punch, the ones that we never want to see. You might even recognize a couple of these pictures. But not every school bus collision or accident is that dramatic. Maybe you just rubbed a pole, clipped another bus, or hit a tree branch really hard. Human nature is to take a minor incident and dismiss it. Oh, I rubbed up against a pole. Maybe your mirror clipped the bus next to you as you were pulling out, or a big tree branch seemed to jump out and hit your bus as you went by. But really what has happened is you have had a collision. So the unthinkable thing has happened. Whether you're at fault or not, you need to know what's next. What should you do? First of all, stay where you are. Do not move the bus, unless directed to by law enforcement or the manager on scene. Secondly, check on your students. Ask, is everyone okay? Third, radio base. Let them know that you've been involved in an accident. They will immediately contact law enforcement, and they will also send a manager out to the scene to assist you. They're going to start to gather a lot of information from you and ask a lot of questions. Be sure to keep your radio turned up and be nearby. If you don't have any students on the bus, you can exit to check on the other driver or to check the scene. You can get your triangle set out. That needs to be done within 15 minutes of having an accident. You can also start to exchange information with the other driver or the other parties involved, although once the manager arrives, they will start to gather that information, as well as law enforcement. If you do have students on the bus, do not exit unless you have to evacuate the bus. Get your seating chart and assignments out, because we need to know which students were sitting in which seats. Also, minimize public interaction. The less said, the better. Don't apologize. Don't discuss details. Just let them know that the police have been called and the manager's on their way, and you can shut the door, shut the window, and not talk to anybody if that is what is best in the situation. As I was researching this topic and looking for pictures, I came across this picture, and I clicked on it to find out what was happening. Unfortunately, January 26, 2016, in Indiana, a school bus driver jumped a curb at an elementary school. She struck two students and killed the school principal. If you are involved in any collision, no matter how minor it seems, be sure to radio base as soon as it happens. If you wait until you return to the yard to report it, you have left the scene of the collision and you will face disciplinary action. And if the collision was bad enough and you are ticketed, you could disqualify your CDL and affect your employment. FMCSA Code 383.51 states that knowingly and willfully leaving the scene of an accident while operating a commercial motor vehicle or a non-commercial motor vehicle will result in disqualification of your CDL for a minimum of 12 months. And even if you don't call in and let us know what happened, you never know who might be watching, as this video will show.
Now to a story you saw first on 7. The driver of a dinged-up car is thanking a Buffalo middle school student for her actions. The 6th grader in Buffalo is getting a lot of praise for leaving this note on the car damaged in an apparent hit and run by her school bus driver. As 7 Eyewitness News reporter Hannah Bueller explains, first student is now in the process of firing that driver.
This sign on Blaine Avenue declaring this a neighborhood watch community stands just steps away from where one man found a note attached to his car. A note that let him know someone was indeed watching when a driver crashed into his car.
I was very impressed. The note had a ton of detail, more than I could have imagined.
Andrew Sipowicz is a senior at Canisius College. When he came out to his car Monday night, he found this note attached. It reads, "If you're wondering what happened to your car, bus 449 hit your car. It stops here every day to drop me off." It was signed by an anonymous 6th grader from Houghton Academy. The right driver's side corner was damaged in an apparent hit and run.
It happened at about 5 p.m. One of my roommates, I wasn't home at the time, one of my roommates was driving by and noticed the bus stopped. It looked extremely close to my car.
So his roommate snapped this photo. It doesn't show the damage, but showed Sipowicz the proximity of the bus to the car. At that point, his roommate didn't see any damage.
From the angle, it looked like it may have hit it, but it could have just been super close to the car. It wasn't super obvious.
And when the driver took off, the 6th grader took it upon herself to step in. She detailed the accident, saying she was trying to pull off and hit the car. She hit and run. She tried to veer over and squeeze through, but couldn't. She made a dent, and I saw what happened. Sipowicz says this student obviously knew right from wrong, and he owes her a great deal of thanks.
Tell the truth, do the right thing, and I think it sets a good example for a lot of students, not just students, but just people in general.
Now, first student is working with Sipowicz and will assume full responsibility of the damage and provide him with a loaner car while his car is getting fixed. And the company says because of this incident, it is in the process of terminating the driver involved. The student's school says it will be celebrating her outstanding leadership and presenting her with a Citizen Award in the upcoming weeks. We are live.
So let's bring this talk about collisions a little closer to home. As I was researching this presentation, I went back and looked at all of the collisions that we had for the last school year, 2020-2021. Our company has 3 designations when we talk about accidents or collisions. Recordable, meaning it is our driver's fault, what the actions that you took contributed to the collision. Non-recordable, meaning that it was the fault of another driver. And an incident, which typically involves things like a child check. So in the last school year, we had 33 recordable collisions. When I looked at the stats and I broke down the collisions, what I found was that we had 8 of them that involved a fixed object and 23 that involved another vehicle. And of that 23, a majority of those were cars that were parked. They weren't moving. So what this says is that our drivers are not estimating their clearances correctly. not understanding what tail swing is or the pivot point of the bus. That's why we've started this Safety Blitz campaign and why a trainer will be taking you through a closed course to help you understand better the clearances on the bus and how to navigate through situations, or to even say, no, I'm not going to go into that situation there. Personally, I think that 33 recordable collisions is 33 too many. It is our goal in this next school year to reduce that number significantly. And it's also human nature for us as drivers who haven't had a collision to sit back and armchair quarterback somebody else's actions. To say, oh, they should have done this, or they shouldn't have done that, or I know it, that driver's always unsafe. Okay, turn the spotlight in on yourself. Look at your driving behaviors. I want to share a personal story with you. In 2012, I had a collision in a school bus. I was working for a different district, and at that time I drove a flat-nose transit bus. It was a big one, 86 passenger, and this certain morning I was trying to get through an intersection at a certain time. The intersection was Deer Flat and Linder. I was making a left onto Deer Flat, and I was trying to get through before 8:12. After 8:12, traffic got really heavy, and 5 kids on the bus. I needed to get them to school, and I was rushing. I'd been through this intersection hundreds of times, and the actions that I took that morning, I had done quite a few times. To enter the left turn lane of that intersection, the entrance to it was pretty short, and if cars were blocking it because I was in a hurry and didn't want to get stuck at the light, I would enter into oncoming traffic to get into the left turn lane. On this particular morning, there was a semi-truck with a trailer in the lane that was going to be going across the intersection, so he was partially blocking the entrance to the left turn lane. So I did what I did hundreds of times before, entered into oncoming traffic to get into my left turn lane. Except as I entered oncoming traffic, I did remember thinking that this is really dumb, I probably shouldn't do this, but nothing's going to happen, I've done this before. Well, the light turned green on the opposite side of the intersection. I see that I have traffic coming towards me, knowing that I'm in their lane, and I tried to squeeze over towards the right. All I ended up doing was hitting the back corner of the trailer with my right side mirrors and took them clean off of the bus. Now, all that time that I thought I was saving by rushing to get through that intersection was wasted. I had to call it in. Another driver had to come pick up those students and take them to school. I had to go do a drug test. My bus had to be out for repairs. I didn't save any time by rushing through that intersection, and I didn't think about the fact that I had done really an illegal maneuver because I was rushing and in a hurry. I never want to go through something like that again, and I never want any of our drivers to go through that as well. So as we go into this school year, please take the things that we're teaching you about collisions and apply them to your driving. Let's reduce our accident rate and have the safest school year possible.
Thank you, Terry, for that great presentation. And thanks to everyone for watching the video and for caring about your students and for being here every day. You guys are an amazing group of people. I feel just blessed to be here with all of you this year. So look for a quiz at the dispatch desk. There should be one there. Fill it out. You do need to get an 80% or higher to get credit for this meeting. So just look for those and turn them in. We'll have a place to turn them in, a box to turn them into. And have a great day, everyone. Bye.